This is FightFans Radio.
Alright, we got too much shit to talk about today. Cut the damn music.
Oh, Derek. We're still not even... We still got 60 minutes to go, buddy. Hello, everybody. Another edition of Untethered MMA on FightFans Radio. It is January 10th, 2013. If you want to call into the show today, you can call us at 410-988-6525, and you can reach the three hosts on Twitter. You can reach me at It's Mike Fagan. You can reach Derek at FightLinkerSubbo, and you can reach Matt Roth at MattRoth512. And as you were saying, Derek, we do have a lot to talk about today. We got the year-end stuff that hopefully you guys researched. I spent all day researching it. But we'll start with a story that you've been sort of ranting and raving about on Twitter. The Eddie Alvarez UFC Bellator love triangle.
Well, there's no love, and there's no love for any of the parties for each other, except for Eddie Alvarez and the UFC. They would like to be together. That is the crux and the focus of the situation, is that Eddie Alvarez became a free agent, finally, after waiting and waiting.
Well, he sort of became a free agent.
No, he became
it's
a free agent.
It's more of a restricted free agent.
Okay, but a free agent, unrestricted or restricted, you're a free agent. You are sans contract at this moment in time. Right now, Eddie Alvarez does not have a fight contract with anybody.
Correct.
He is offered a fight contract by the UFC that would make him the highest paid 155-pound fighter in the world. $250,000 signing bonus, $70,000 to show up, $70,000 to win, a pay-per-view cut that is tiered on the number of buys that you sell up and above 200,000 on the card, and that's regardless of whether you're the main event or the co-main event. Now, the original plan from various sources and reports is that the idea was to have Alvarez versus Bendo or Diaz, because this was discussed and planned before that fight on Fox, would be the co-main event of GSP versus Diaz. Now, if you look at the floor of a George St. Pierre card at 700,000 buys, that's just the minimum. That's Carlos Condit, that's Dan Hardy, that's a nobody. Eddie Alvarez would have stood to make roughly $1.2 million in just the pay-per-view cut off of that fight if he was involved on that card. Bellator has matching rights, but even though they're not a pay-per-view company, they've never done pay-per-view, they don't have any currently slated plans to do pay-per-view. They say that if they ever do in the future, then they'll match that cut. And in response to the UFC saying, well, we'll give him a title shot immediately, even though that's not in the contract, they said, well, we'll give him a shot at our title, which is the same thing. The analogy that I like to use is that yesterday I matched Paul Krugman's contract. He's a Nobel Prize-winning economist that writes for the New York Times. I took his contract out of the PDF, which is exactly what Bjorn Rebney said he did with the UFC contract. I crossed out New York Times, and I put my WordPress blog in place. So that's a match. That's the same deal. It's the exact same contract, because my WordPress blog is the same as the New York Times, and he stands to make just as much money with me.
Did you read Loretta Hunt's article about the situation?
No, I read Mike Chiappetta's today and a couple of others, but I did not see Loretta's.
Loretta's is actually the best one. It was the most in-depth, and it had the most quotes from each of the parties involved. One of the interesting things was Alvarez's lawyers were saying part of their argument that it doesn't match is that one of the points in the UFC contract is that he would get a guaranteed fight on Fox. Bellator and Bjorn Rebney in their contract changed Fox to Spike TV. Obviously, not the same entity. That's one of the most interesting parts to me. If they had changed it to CBS, since it's a Viacom-owned network, there's an argument there that matches. But I think the whole situation is very interesting. I don't think there's anything wrong with what Bellator has done so far, because Alvarez is a prime asset, and apparently they are treating him like that, and they want to keep him.
It's not wrong in that it's malicious or evil. It's not that they're doing it just to stick a dick up Eddie Alvarez's ass and there's no other reason for it. They're doing it as a self-interested promotional company that doesn't want to lose one of its biggest assets. And by doing this, you hear about Bellator in the news more than you have in the last 3 months, because nobody's done anything in that organization. Now they're in the news. Now it's them versus the UFC. They get elevated to that level. But if you're a fan of mixed martial arts, and if you pretend on any level to be an advocate for the fighters and to give a shit about their interests, then you have to acknowledge that Bellator is fucking Eddie Alvarez over here in their own interests, when all that Bjorn's been claiming for years is that they were so happy with Eddie and they worked together and that he wanted to see Eddie make as much money as possible, and that if he could make it to the big show and succeed and possibly be the best in the world, that God bless him and I wish him the best of luck. That all turned out to be bullshit. So if you don't like Dana White, all multiple promotions and co-promotion at the top level does is make more Dana Whites and more self-interested pricks that only care about themselves and not the sport or the fighter or the fans, just themselves. And that's what Bjorn's resolved himself to be. I'm not going to watch that shit on Spike. I'm not interested.
I do think there's one very egregious tactical mistake the UFC made, but before I talk about that, I want to get your opinion on it, Matt, since you haven't spoken at all.
Okay, so I think the big thing, and Sebo kind of talked about it, is that to me they never matched it, because if the UFC says, hey, you get to be on one fight on UFC on Fox, you can't match that. You can't match that.
I think that Eddie will make in sponsorships for that fight will exceed what he's made in Bellator up until this point.
No, it's not even that. It's not even that. It's the fact that, like, if the language in a contract says you will fight on this network, you can't match that. You cannot match that, especially when, like, if we're looking at households and ratings, you would equate Spike to FX. That's what Spike TV is FX. It's in the same tier for cable. It's in the same tier for ratings. It's in the same tier for everything. Spike TV equals FX. So if the UFC contract said, you'll have 2 fights on FX, then yes, Bellator could say, could just change the words to Spike. But Fox is the equivalent of, as you said, it's of the Viacom holding of CBS. If Viacom said, okay, we'll put a Bellator fight on CBS 4 times a year, like we're doing with the like the UFC's doing with Fox, yes, you could match that. The other issue, and Sebo is correct, is look, if your entire relationship with Eddie Alvarez was, I want him to make as much money, I'm his friend, and blah blah blah, you can't then turn around and go, oh well,
this is a business.
This is a business, because then you can't be friends. You can't be friends with somebody if you're running a business. You cannot do that. And I would say the same thing to the UFC, where Dana White is apparently friends, or was friends with Stephan Bonner, and he hasn't spoken to him since the positive test at what was it, 143? 153.
150. Yeah, that's right.
Like the positive test there, like, and he hasn't spoken to him since. You cannot, if you have an employee, you can't be friends with them. You cannot be friends with your employer. It's impossible, because either eventually they're gonna let you go or they're not going to be looking out for your best interest because you're still their employee and you have a contract with them.
Well, that's what we have to pretend somehow that the fighters aren't self-interested too. Eddie Alvarez does not give one fuck about Bellator, and never has. Gilbert Melendez did not give one fuck about Strikeforce. They went where the money was.
That's not accurate either. Eddie Alvarez, wasn't he given the opportunity like 2-3 years ago? I remember Bloody Elbow covered it. That like he was given the opportunity to buy into Bellator.
I thought I heard something about that. I don't know if that was ever confirmed or not.
I remember Bloody Elbow wrote about it. It was I can't remember. But
and
like,
if it was offered, then even at 26 or 27 years old, he was smart enough to say, "Wow, I'm never going to fight in the UFC if I do this. So fuck that."
right. I mean, but like, also look, Eddie Alvarez's management has changed since the first time that he negotiated with Bellator. At that time, he was managed by Monty Cox, and apparently Bjorn Remney rather deal with Monty Cox, who, as many UFC careers as he's managed. He's not Glenn Robinson from Authentic Sports Management, who is he's a billionaire. Like, he's an actual businessman with actual like business acumen. You know, Monty Cox is good, as nice of a guy as he is, and as many UFC careers as he's handled, and you know he's promoting extreme fighting in Wild Bill's barn and bars in Iowa. Not running a billion-dollar business that deals with Home Depot and Sears and Lowe's and all these other companies. Monty Cox is not that guy, and Glenn Robinson is a businessman, and he's dealing with this like a businessman, which is, I want to optimize the amount of money that my client, and therefore myself, can get.
I alluded to the tactical mistake the UFC made, and I think all of this could have been avoided had the UFC made one very specific outline in their contract. And Bjorn talks about this in the article. But if the UFC had just guaranteed that Alvarez would fight on a pay-per-view, by March or April of 2013, it would have put Bellator in a situation where they either had to guarantee Alvarez a pay-per-view or they were going to have to let him go. Bjorn, there's a quote in here in this article that Loretta Hunt wrote. Let me see if I can find it here.
While you're doing that, is this assuming that Benson Henderson is both willing and able to fight in March or April?
Well, it doesn't even have to be March or April. I mean, they could have said by June. I mean, the point I was making with March or April is that you're putting Bellator in a situation where the quicker you can guarantee Eddie Alvarez a fight on pay-per-view, the harder it is for Bellator to match.
There's part of me that thinks that Dana knew they were going to sue and just said, you know what, this will be the last mistake they ever make. This will kill them in public opinion, so fuck it.
But this is what Bjorn said to Loretta Hunt at CNN.com. Zuffa put that language in because they intended to give themselves flexibility to do with him as they chose. They guaranteed substance where they guaranteed it, and they left language ambiguous where they intended for it to be ambiguous and not a guarantee. We have to match what's guaranteed, and we absolutely did it. And that's what I think the interesting part is, because I think there's an argument that Bjorn and Bellator matched what was guaranteed, but there's also an argument that just the expected value of the contract is nothing near what the UFC is offering.
Frankly, if Bellator wins, it's not necessarily good for him. But go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, the one thing which has kind of been brought up a bunch is that, this never would have happened if the UFC offered the Hector Lombard deal. And even Bjorn Remney said I believe he said it as well, is the deal that they offered Hector we couldn't match, and the one that they offered Eddie we could. It's one of those things where I believe, and this is my personal belief, I don't know, I haven't spoken internally with anybody at Zuffa, so this is just me in my perspective, is that they felt burnt. They got burned on the Eddie on the Hector Lombard deal. They offered what do you get? $350,000 guaranteed. It was an absurd deal. And so they weren't going to do that with Eddie Alvarez, who fights in a division that historically does not draw as well as middleweight or light heavyweight or welterweight or heavyweight. And they're not going to offer that same deal. And so it wasn't even if Hector Lombard panned out well, they weren't going to give him that same deal because you're not going to recoup the expenses the same way you would on a Hector Lombard-Anderson Silva match.
Yeah, it's funny, too, to me, though, because I think, in my mind, they made the opposite deals that they should have. They should have given Eddie more money. Eddie's younger. He's more marketable. He's, to me, a more exciting fighter. He's got a better track record against top competition, where Hector's 33, 34. If he's going to fight Silva, he's got to do it the next year or two. And at this point, after losing to Boach in his first UFC fight, he's going to have to win at least one more fight, if not two. and he's fighting Yushin Okami next, which is actually could be a fight that gets him a title shot. But to me, Eddie Alvarez is the more valuable property.
Yeah, of course. The only problem that Eddie Alvarez has is that, and again, if he was walking in without that loss to Chandler, he gets he gets that deal that Hector Lombard got.
Yeah,
with no doubt.
Yeah, and as Matt, you pointed out, it's not the most marquee division, especially in terms of selling pay-per-views by itself. The champion of the division right now makes I think 39 to show and 39 to win.
Yeah.
So again, 70 for 70. I don't blame Zuffa for this going through. I blame Bjorn for completely lying and misrepresenting in every single interview he's done over the last 3 years his relationship with Eddie Alvarez and his hopes and concern for his future. Fuck Bjorn Rebney. Like, it's unbelievable to me. When Dana White says, I want this guy to make a bunch of money, I believe it. Because then, if he's in a place where he's making as much money as possible, Bjorn's taking money right out of Eddie's pocket, right out of his retirement account, right out of his kid's college fund by doing this. And by the way, everybody that's screaming about the sanctity of contract language right now, I'd like to go back to 2008 and see where these guys like MMA Supremacy and all the others were on Randy Couture's contract and whether or not he should be set free from it. Fucking hypocrites, all of them.
One thing before we move on, and you guys both sort of alluded to it, it's hard to say with any sort of certainty without knowing Bellator's financials and what they're prepared to pay fighters and what they project their revenue stream to be in the next couple of years. But
they will lose money on this deal.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. It seems like you guys are both pretty bearish on it for Bellator, but
on the
let's assume the court's rule for them is keeping Eddie Alvarez a positive for them or a negative.
It's a negative because the very first step that you have to look at it is you're essentially spending $400,000 on a Eddie Alvarez-Michael Chandler rematch. Do you think that fight pays for itself on spot?
No. You're spending $400,000 on one side of the rematch.
Yeah. Well, how much? Well, Chandler doesn't make $50,000. Like, there's no way he makes any money.
I'm just saying. Like, I have no idea what Chandler's deal is. Like, I've never seen financials for Bellator. It's not like when the UFC pay scale pays their payout comes out and and everybody talks about how fighters are getting underpaid and everything. I've personally never seen any site report what Bellator is paying fighters. I've never seen it. So my belief is that on just that one fight, are they going to spend let's say $500,000 roughly? $500,000 on it, and then the other half, and then still have to pay for everything else. I don't know, man. It's Bellator. If they re-sign Eddie, can you guys can you have a business relationship going forward, or no?
If you're Eddie or if you're Bellator?
No, like both. If with you suing Eddie Alvarez and Eddie Alvarez suing you, let's say the court rules in favor of Bellator, is there a way to actually fix this relationship?
Well, that would be really. It'd be really. I mean, it's up to both sides. I could totally see Alvarez just giving him the finger. I mean,
at this point, if the courts rule in favor of Bellator, can't Eddie just sit out 2013 and then become
I believe it's a year, a calendar year from the date that you say, I'm not honoring the contract, and then for a year there's a non-compete, and then after that you'd be a free agent. I don't know when that calendar year starts, though. If it's being arbitrated in the courts and then they rule in favor of Bellator, does the calendar year start that day, or does he get credit for the fact that he hasn't fought in forever? And Michael Chandler has had exactly one fight since that that fall 2011 fight, where the great fight where he had the upset of Eddie Alvarez. He's had one fight since then against Akihiro fucking Gono. So way to go, Bjorn, on monetizing your new champions and getting them out there so people know who they are.
Here's my final comment on it. I just hope that Eddie Alvarez, he has his dogs, protected.
I just searched. I googled Bellator salaries, Matt, and I found Junkie has a Bellator 66 salary payout, which just happened to be an Eddie Alvarez show. Eddie made, it looks like, 1550 in his fight against Shinya Aoki, and Aoki made 60,000 to show. And then everyone else in the show, the next 3 fights that looked like they were main, or 4 fights that looked like they were main card
15,
fights.
15.
And then a couple 35, 30, or 3,500, 3,500.
Hey, funny quick note about the Aoki and Alvarez payouts. That is $1 to each fighter for every person that watched that fight.
That actually was $1 to each person.
I think that's less
This
than
lucrative fucking offers and lucrative deals they're making here.
So yeah, and one final thing about it. I'll just get your predictions, as none of us are lawyers. How do you think the court is going to rule? Let's start with Derek.
I believe that they'll find that Bellator is insufficient and incapable of matching the UFC's pay-per-view offers with the guarantees. The thing is, the UFC can't come back and modify its deal now, which I thought they could, which I think is bullshit. I'm sure that's how it works in other pro sports too. You have your offer, and if the other team matches it, you can't say, all right, we'll throw another few million on. But I think that the courts will go with Eddie in terms of being a young athlete, trying to exploit his small athletic window. And if they don't, then I think he'll sit out the year. I don't think we'll ever see Eddie Alvarez in the circle again.
Matt,
I don't know, man. It depends. If the court says they've matched the contract word for word and that's it, then it's going to go to Bellator. If the court says, well, you can't, Fox and Spike TV are not the same, that's pretty much that's it. That's all you got to say. My big concern, as I said again, is that you won't be able to actually fix this situation. It's just going to always be a problem.
we apparently have a call, maybe? Caller, are you there?
What's going on?
Oh, it's Matt Bishop.
Matt Bishop's the most patient son of a bitch on the planet, because he's been sitting there for like 20 minutes after our producer said that the guy hung up.
Now, Matt, I imagine you want to talk about the fact that you interviewed Bjorn within the last week?
Well, no, I mean, it's not just that, but I wanted to come in and, maybe provide some levity to the hot-headed discussion here on the Untethered MMA podcast.
We don't do levity. That's not what we do.
No, hey. No, I'm talking about Mike is going off. I mean, Sabo, you're just, you're the bastion of reliability and truth and all that stuff. So I don't.
Are you saying I'm predictable, Bishop? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like a clock.
Would you be offended if I just started calling you Bischoff instead of Bishop?
Hey, it would be a 6th grade flashback for me, but it's nothing new.
Those Monday Night Wars must have been rough on you, I gotta say.
They were not great.
So what's going on, Matt? What do you want to talk about?
Well, I just, I think this is just such an interesting case, and Mike, I kind of agree with what you're saying. It's that it's kind of splitting hairs on how you define a match, and I would tend to kind of believe. I mean, believe's not the right word, but I would be a little bit on Bellator's side in this, and I think the UFC really screwed the pooch here because they have the means to make sure that Bellator cannot possibly match it, and they chose not to do that. And that's why I'm kind of interested. Like, I want to know, did Eddie Alvarez actually sign a UFC contract, which was then sent back to Bellator, or was it just an offer sheet, or what exactly the deal was? Because if I was Alvarez, and I had that UFC offer, I would not have signed it under those circumstances because of all those things and what we're seeing now, what could potentially go wrong. And so that's kind of the line I want to see to find out where I lie on this particular issue. But it's definitely, this is going to set a precedent for sure in what the court rules. And I think, a lot of fighters are looking at this, and I think it's going to be very, very curious. And I think he's going to end up in Bellator. I think they're going to rule that was a match, and he's got to fight for Bellator.
Now, when you spoke to Bjorn, and I listened to that interview, but did you get the feeling that he would be willing to work with Eddie Alvarez again and like bygones be bygones, and let's just move forward?
Oh, absolutely. Because here's the thing I got from that interview more than anything else. It's that I don't think Bjorn has a problem with Eddie because, they've gone back a long time now, and I think the problem he has is with Authentic Sports Management. And that's where the problem lies, because one thing he kept going back to is, Eddie and I would hash all this stuff out over a beer back in the day and stuff like that. And I asked him flat out, I said, it doesn't sound like you think too highly of Authentic Sports Management, and he basically indicated that that was the case. And so I think, he'll work with Eddie Alvarez again, no doubt, but I think his Bjorn Rebbe's problem is with ASM.
Yeah, but I mean, he's going to have to deal with ASM going forward anyway.
That's true, and that's kind of where the interesting part lies, And something that I wrote down here during my 15 minutes on hold that I wanted to bring up.
I like Matt Bishop taking notes on hold.
And our other caller that we have on the line right now, this is unprecedented that we have two callers, but Matt Bishop waited like 15 minutes, so please hold on for a couple of more. But yes, Matt, go ahead.
I know, this is a big-time radio show. You got to wait to get on. It's like
blowing up here.
WFAN in New York. But, you mentioned something about, how Bjorn is always saying, if Eddie wants to go to the big show, I'm behind him making money. But and he did say that, and I think he really did believe that when he said that. But the thing is that Bellator going to Spike TV changed everything, and I think that changed how he had the view, the philosophy and all that being bought by Viacom, and I think that's where kind of that divide lies, is that now it is definitely a business decision, and I can't blame. I think that, Sabo, you might be right in the misrepresentation category, that maybe Bellator is misrepresenting their case a little bit here, but they're doing what they have to do, and that's why I don't really have a problem with either side.
I specifically stated that it wasn't evil or malicious, it was self-interested, which Bjorn had gone out of his way to say, between me and Eddie, I'm rooting for Eddie as an individual, which clearly is not the case on a financial basis right now. But I'm wondering how much money Viacom is going to be willing to burn in legal fees and in filings and in court dates and in time going forward and in bad publicity for Bellator, because even if they come out of this looking good, the fan reaction has not been fuck the UFC for trying to pilfer all the other organizations' top talent like it's been in the past. The narrative has been, what the hell is Bellator doing standing in the way of all these awesome fights that we want to see? And I think as that goes forward and as Viacom begins to wake up and realize that, because they're probably not even aware of the situation right now, they're too busy trying to find a replacement for the Jersey Shore. I think that as time goes on, it's going to look better and better for the UFC. And like I said, I think Eddie Alvarez's next fight will be in front of a lot of people on pay-per-view in the UFC. The one thing Bellator is misrepresenting the shit out of is their intentions and their ability to go to pay-per-view, because that's never been discussed as part of their business model except for a hey, maybe. And now they're talking about doing it in 6 months to make Eddie Alvarez happy. It's silly.
Well, I think the other thing going against them, too, is that if this gets dragged out, and especially if it looks like Eddie won't fight in 2013, as long as nothing changes and it falls on Bellator in terms of what people are perceiving, to fans, that says, or that looks like Bellator's keeping Alvarez taking a year out of his prime.
Eddie's been pretty nice so far in interviews and everything, saying they're offering me a big bag versus a lobster, but if it really comes down to it and he says, fuck them, I'm sitting out for a year, and if you want to know why I'm not fighting, ask Bjorn Rebney, the pitches and torch forks are going to come out. I want to quickly get our other caller in here, because I don't know if it's somebody famous like Matthew Bishop or just like a regular listener.
Okay, well, I'll let you guys get going then.
Thanks.
Hey, man, thanks for coming in. You're always welcome, and yes, we do take calls for future reference.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I believe our other caller is...
What's up, McKinley Noble?
Yeah, known on Twitter as Ken the Great One.
That guy's famous as shit. He's got 1 million page hits on Bleacher Report.
Hey, what's up, guys? Can you hear me?
Yep.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome. This is actually, this has actually been kind of a big blow-up, but I just wanted to call in and say, I think that the other thing about this that people tend to miss is that, this actually does make both UFC and it also makes Bellator look pretty bad. But the other thing is that the UFC never should have offered Eddie this much money because, granted, we don't know how just how much most of the other fighters get paid. But the fact is, what they offered Eddie is more than 3 of their own champions make. And, they have the amount that they that they can actually report. And it doesn't cover the whole thing. if you're just looking at the raw numbers that they give, what they offered Eddie is way more than their own lightweight champion makes, and that's got to make some people pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think Benson was making some noise about that. I wanted to mention that while we had Bishop on the phone, and you, Fagan, when you were talking about offering the Lombard deal. If Benson was angry about that, then how much angrier would it have been if they come in with 100 to show, 100 to win offer, or if they give him a kind of Diaz offer where it's like 200,000 to show and no win bonus? Like if it's just something goofy like that.
I think the craziest thing that they offered him, obviously the money, is more than they are currently paying their champion, but they guaranteed him 3 analyst spots on cards that he wasn't involved in as a fighter. Like
and Bellator can
that's
match
insane.
that.
I don't see why they couldn't match that.
Well, if it's on Fox, they can.
Well, I don't think it's guaranteed on Fox. It's just on UFC shows that he's not fighting.
But Ken's correct in that. One, this is completely unprecedented in the fact that we've never actually gotten details of UFC contract negotiations ever. Like, besides the Couture lawsuit where the details came out,
There's one other instance. There's the Couture instance back in 2007, 2008, and then Alistair Overeem's lawsuit last year with KOI.
Yeah.
It was Golden Glory or with KOI in the U.S., whatever it was, but we got details of that contract as well.
And I said Ken, I meant McKinley. He brings up a great point: is that we've never gotten these details. Managers, they don't usually know what the other fighters are getting because that information is kept close to held close to the vest. And now we're finding out that he was offered this much money as a guaranteed signing bonus, this much money as show and win, which eventually, yes, it comes out with with the commissions and stuff. But like the analyst positions and the guaranteed fights on Fox and everything like that, that's never been stated before ever. And that's a huge
precedent. Plus, also that you also have to think about the fact that they said that they basically said that they were going to offer him a shot at the title, which is something that makes no sense because it's like, sure, when they actually brought over Diaz to get the shot versus GSP, the company was owned by Zuffa anyway. Plus, he had a past UFC record, and when they also brought over Overeem, he actually didn't get a title shot right off the bat because he's also not homegrown UFC talent. So, if they give him a title shot as soon as he walks in, what if he actually beats Bindo? That actually makes Bellator look really good because, they just brought in some homegrown Bellator talent, and that actually ruins the image of their belt.
Of course. There's a ton of, Zuffa really fucked up on a couple of instances, and the big one is they're offering this guy crazy amount of money where Benson Henderson, who's been with the company since WEC 30, I have to look it up, but he's been with the company for now at least 4 years. He's not making that much money, and he's not even close to that deal, at all. And
the only lightweight that makes that much guaranteed is Penn.
Is BJ Penn.
And Gilbert Melendez, if his contract holds up when they merge.
That's a huge Pandora's box that they're just basically saying, oh, well, this is what he's getting. And now when Ben Henderson is able to re-up his deal, that dude's going to be like, well, this is what you offered Eddie Alvarez and he didn't pan out. This is what you offered Hector Lombard and he didn't pan out. I want some more money. And it's maybe not Hector Lombard. That's going to be somebody like Chris Weidman who will be like, well, this is what you offered Hector Lombard and he sucks shit.
Well,
this is really just a matter of just trying, basically just trying to cut off your nose to basically spite your own face. If they weren't trying to, I think that if the UFC wasn't trying to just get to Bellator because they have such a massive grudge against them, Spike, and also Viacom, there's no way they would have offered him this much money.
Right. And, I think there are a couple points to be made here. I like the cutting off the nose to spite your face analogy, and I think it works both ways because the last time that Bellator gave a $250,000 signing bonus to a lightweight, it was Roger Huerta. And that didn't work out very well for them as far as bang for their buck. This is a useful test of what I would like to see the Bellator UFC system be. If you can prove yourself at Bellator and be superior to a level that people want to see you in the UFC, then the pipeline for you to do that and get paid more than what your market value would normally be because you have somewhat of a built-in fan base and extra credentials, that should be unencumbered by either side because it helps Bellator. It gets more eyes on them and gives their fighters more credibility if they come up and succeed. And it helps the UFC because you have injections of talent from outside talent pools, even if they don't pan out and come in and win, if they're like a Jake Shields or if Gilbert Melendez comes in and flames out or something of that nature, it still builds interest instead of just having your contenders fight each other over and over again. So it's a useful mechanism, and the person who's fucking it up right now is Bjorn Rebney.
And and Bellator is fucking themselves too, because if they do retain Eddie Alvarez's services, Mike Chandler is going to.
We got a slight echo on Mike's line, Roth, but go ahead.
No, what I was saying is like, and Bellator is screwing themselves too, because if they retain the services of Mike Chandler, of Eddie Alvarez, and Chandler and Alvarez happens again, and Chandler happens to win, Chandler can now go, well, I'm your champion. I'm the guy who just beat him twice in a row, two fights in a row, basically. I want that same deal. But, like, everybody's fucking themselves on this thing. And Bellator would be better off just saying, wiping their hands and saying, we have a champion who beat the shit out of him in what was a fight of the year candidate, and we have a guy who, like, dominated him. We don't need Eddie Alvarez going forward.
I like how you emoted that with the hand slapping. There is a little bit of residual effect on Twitter that, hey, if Alvarez comes over and wins the title, then Michael Chandler's the #1 lightweight in the world. There's still a little bit of that flicker of a flame of a hope that there'll be a #1 fighter outside of the UFC one day. It's not going to happen, guys.
Right.
Anything else, Before I let you go here?
All right. Hey, guys, thanks a lot.
Hey, thank you, man.
Thanks for coming on. We've talked almost 40 minutes about Eddie Alvarez, and there's actually more that we could talk about Eddie, but I think we should move on.
Yeah, we're going to spend like 4 minutes on each category now for your whole of the year thing, unless we go over the hour.
Which we can do. I wanted to talk about...
let's go long today. I'm sorry, guys. I had to get that off my chest. We got in some calls. I showed off some balls. I was just looking for a rhyme there. It was fun.
I wanted to talk about Goldberg and the Last Strike Force show coming up, but we'll get to the year-end stuff, and then depending on how long we take on this, we can get to that stuff or not. It's not that
Roth,
important.
you got nothing better to do, right?
A bit of breaking news stuff before we get to that stuff. According to the MMA report and Jason Floyd, who wrote the article, Husamar Palhares and Joey Beltran suspended following positive drug test at UFC on Fox 6. Palhares tested positive for elevated levels of testosterone, and Beltran tested positive for nandrolone, which is a steroid.
Why would you?
It's the worst. It's the worst fucking steroid.
Damn it! I love Beltran too, but bye, I guess.
So yeah,
he's probably gone.
Don't take fucking nandrolone.
Don't take Stanisol either. Just leave those on the shelf. They last forever.
They literally will never leave your system.
And you can no longer say, well, I was at Whole Foods, so I must have just gotten some shit that, I don't know what they're feeding those cows these days. God damn it.
You guys done with that little rant?
That sucks. I'm very, that's...
All right, let's get into the year-end stuff. We talked about it last week, and we got everyone here this week. I don't know if you guys did any sort of prep for this, but I went back and looked at some stuff and watched some fights from the rest of the year. And we'll start with submission of the year. Do you guys want me to start listing some of the better ones, or do you guys have some on top of your head here?
Let's each give our own, and then you can bring up some others, and we'll see if we want to switch our picks, because we're stupid and we probably forgot a bunch. But I don't want you to make me rethink my pick before I give it.
Okay. There's a couple areas...
You want me to go first?
Yeah, I didn't do any research, so I'm just going to probably piggyback on you.
Ah, you son of a bitch. Sub of the Year ties into another one of my of the year picks, mostly because of who it was done 2. We all know that Dustin Poirier is kind of famous for that Darce. He does love it. So when Chan Sung Jung reversed it and hit it on him, that was my sub of the year. Nothing since it has touched it. My close second place was Rick Story getting the blood squoze out of him by Damian Maia.
You did not mention Charles Oliveira's calf slicer on Eric Wisely, which I have as my number one. And a lot of people did online, although the Jung Darce choke on Poirier was another one that got mentioned a lot. I was actually in the audience for the Oliveira submission, which is hilarious because you couldn't really tell what was going on if you were watching the action in the cage, but I happened to be watching on the screen, and not many people know what a calf slicer looks like, but that thing is nasty as hell and not something you want to be caught in.
Yeah, it sucks. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go ahead and say Jessica Pene's triangle choke at Invicta FC 3.
You're a son of a bitch.
Over Neho Sugliyama was so baller. That was awesome.
Shot out of a cannon.
The other one that I had noted here was Joe Lozon's triangle on Jamie Varner on Fox. That was awesome.
That was pretty sweet. Can we call Joe Lozon the fighter of the year, even though he lost his last fight? Like, that dude's a fucking fighter.
Fighter. Do you want to be a fucking fighter?
That dude is a fighter.
Total fighter.
Now, there were a lot of really worthwhile candidates for knockout of the year. I think there's one that everyone probably is picking, and if you pick against it, you're, for whatever reason, trying to be cool.
Deadspin had like 5 articles on it. Like, that's it.
Yeah, when Deadspin has a slow motion GIF of this knockout, that pretty much seals the deal. It's Edson Barboza's spinning kick on Terry Edom at UFC 142.
They also had a slow motion video set to indie music, which they do sometimes, but the UFC made them pull it.
Yes,
very sad. Let that shit go, guys. It fucking comes back more than you lose.
And the other great thing about that is, obviously the actual technique used was awesome, but Adam did a full Michael Bisping at the end of it, just arms straight up above his head, stiff as a board, looked like he might be dead, which always adds to it. I would imagine we unanimously agree on this before I start mentioning other candidates.
Yeah, but if I let my heart talk and I let my eyes talk because I was there, it's Cerrone Goulart because I was there.
A couple of the ones that I liked a lot, Pat Barry's knockout of Shane Del Rosario just last month at the Tough 16 finale. I'm always a fan of really brutal knockouts, and that one was especially brutal. Kind of staggering him with a couple punches and then landed a right hook that just fucking planted him on the mat against the cage. I also really liked Tim Boetsch, his comeback against Yushin Okami, and the hockey fight aspect of that one. A couple other ones I saw online that people sort of liked, Kung Lee's counter on Rich Franklin, Jose Aldo's knee against Chad Mendes.
Is that 2012?
Yep.
How about Chad Mendes' knockout of Cody McKenzie?
That was
awesome.
Also badass. I mean, I think the fact that he's fighting Cody McKenzie, which is a walking punching bag, more or less, plays in that. Machida's counter.
The best part of the Mendes McKenzie knockout is Mendes had no problem with Cody McKenzie, and then at the weigh-ins, McKenzie tried being like Nick Diaz and like jawing at him and stuff. And at that point, I was in Vegas and I was around them and everything, and like Chad Mendes basically was like, "Well, fuck him. I'm gonna knock the shit. Like I'm gonna knock him the fuck out." and even like afterwards at the post-fight press conference, Dana White made fun of Cody McKenzie. Like it was the funniest thing in the world because like Dana White shouldn't make fun of him at all. And Dana was like, "Well, what was he fucking thinking?"
Still a few more. There was a couple categories where it was sort of, this one was still sort of. There's a number one answer, but the number two I think could go a lot of different ways. There was also Yves Edwards' knockout of Jeremy Stevens at Fox 5 with another counter. Machida knocking out Beta with a counter. Chris Weidman's elbows against Mark Munoz. Johnny Hendricks making Martin Kampmann fall flat on his back. And then Anthony Pettis knocking out Joe Lozon with a head kick at UFC 144. Also one of the ones that I saw mentioned a lot.
It was a good year for knockouts. It really was.
Yes.
I wanted to add a real quick category because I'm reflecting now on my time at UFC 150. I saw what I think was probably one of the most brutal beatings of the year, which was Michael Kiper versus Jared Heyman. I don't know if you guys remember that from the prelims UFC 150,
Yep.
but Heyman was just dead on his feet for like 6 minutes before he finally went down. And what was when you think about a fight this year, it couldn't be from any other organization, it's very possible, but what was the worst beatdown that you saw that you were just like, oh shit?
Well, I don't know if this is the worst one I saw, but in rewatching a couple fights from this past year, the third round of John Fitch and Eric Silva was pretty brutal. I mean, Fitch had Silva in mount, and it was one of those things where Silva was doing enough for the referee not to stop it, but really wasn't doing anything at all to defend himself. He was sort of trying to turn on the side and kind of try to hip escape, but Fitch wasn't having any of it and was just landing shot after shot to his face. And as a referee, if I was a referee, I might have stopped it. I forget who was refereeing the fight. I think it was Mark Goddard. He let it continue to the end of the bell, but that to me just sprung out to my head.
How about Glover Teixeira versus Fabio Maldonado?
How about Glover Teixeira versus Kyle Kingsbury?
How about Kyle Kingsbury versus Jimmy Manua? Like
that's a nice little triangle of shit kickings.
That was shit kickings all around, and they all happened in 2012.
That's a bad. Is Kyle Kingsbury retired yet?
No, but is Fabio Maldonado able to tell what different colors are?
Hey, he's good. He's got good boxing.
No, he has shit. He has good hands and shit fucking head movement. So it's so frustrating.
He'll let you hit him in order to hit him back, but that's not a good plan against Glover Teixeira.
That's a terrible plan against anybody.
Well, most, but not all.
He has no idea. He has no idea what a triangle is right now. Like an actual triangle, he couldn't recognize it. He's still trying to figure out the blocks game.
Hey, let's get Fabio Maldonado to call in.
I'll be like, who?
See if he can read 50 Shades of Grey for us.
We'll move on to card of the year. I don't think there was one show that really stood out.
Fox 5.
Fox 5 I have tied for second on my list.
How about the Japan card? That was awesome.
The Japan card was mine.
Japan's my number one too.
Yeah, right.
What about all the Invictus shows? Those were all card of the year. You're all fucking. You know what? Here's my one thing. I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant right now. Invictus sucks. Invictus sucks, and if Ustream can't fucking figure it out, and their old streaming service can't fucking figure it out, that means their shit sucks. I don't care that their fucking fights are entertaining. That doesn't mean it's good. And if you actually think that with 77,000 people reporting for watching Invicta, what was it, 5 or the 4, whatever the fuck the last show was, that is a terrible number. If you think Showtime is going into the Invicta business, you are batshit crazy. The only company that will actually deal with Invicta right now is fucking Access Television, and they probably don't even fucking care.
Well, there's also Ustream, which carries our show, so hi, Ustream.
Yeah, shout out to Ustream. You guys haven't fucked up our show, though. What up?
Yeah, we appreciate it. Well, we haven't brought in the crazy, unprecedented demand that Invicta did. Holy shit.
Man, fucking 3 million people watching Invicta, of course.
Crashing the internet, bro. Crashing the internet.
Apparently Invicta streams are doing more than UFC on Facebook. Yeah, fuck out of here. Are you serious? Fuck out of here. Morons. All of you are morons. You're fucking marks. Stop white knighting for this bullshit event. If you're going to do the same thing for fucking Titan and Legacy and XFC, that's cool then. Do that. But nobody was fucking around when Tachi Palace's stream sucked on Sherdog and everybody was white knighting for them. That shit didn't happen. Stop doing that because it comes off as you just trying to defend your fucking friend instead of saying, hey, look, Shannon Knapp, your shit sucks. Try and improve it. Instead of going on Twitter and talking about how fucking awesome it is.
Nobody was going to bat for Itachi Palace when they were blowing shit left and right. Nobody was like, hey, leave Strikeforce alone when they blew up the Joe Riggs versus Jay Huron fight. Nobody could fucking watch it. There is a little bit of selective shit there. I don't appreciate you stealing my thunder and trying to outrant me on my own fucking show, Roth.
Dude, it's my show, you fucking moron. And
you ain't even here half the time.
Hey,
this is like a vacation home for you. I fucking live here.
And we'll see how the ratings are with me here, moron.
Oh, yeah, no, they spike. You bring them in, Ron. Absolutely. all the off-limits topics that come with you on the show, absolutely.
So I want to run down the cards for the two cards that we mentioned. There's another card that I wanted to mention, and I'll run to that one. The UFC on Fox 5 show had Benson Henderson and Nate Diaz, Shogun Hua, Alexander Gustafsson, BJ Penn, Rory McDonald, Mike Swick, Matt Brown, and then the prelims, some of the highlights, Yves Edwards, Jeremy Stevens, and that sort of looks like that was it in terms of highlights. UFC 144 had a 7-fight main card consisting of Edgar and Henderson at the top, Quentin Jackson's whatever performance you want to call that against Ryan Bader, Mark Hunt, Czech Congo, Yoshihiro Akiyama, Jake Shields, Okami, Boch, Hatsu Hyoki, Bart Palashevsky, and Anthony Pettis, Joe Lozon, which just on paper is still a fantastic card. And then they had on the undercard, or the prelims, Gomi knocking out Eiji Mitsuoka and Vaughn Lee submitting Kid Yamamoto. And the other card I wanted to mention, UFC 146 was the heavyweight card. Dos Santos beating Mir in the main event, Velasquez and Bigfoot Silva, Roy Nelson, Dave Herman, Stipe Miocic, and Shane Del Rosario, and Stefan Struve and LeVar Johnson in the opener on the pay-per-view.
Yes, I thoroughly enjoyed that show very much. I don't want to be reminded of Kid Yamamoto's UFC career because it makes me sad, and I don't want to think about it. About 3 years ago, that might have been my favorite highlight reel in MMA was Kid Yamamoto's, and now it's just sad to think about.
Yeah, the other card I wanted to mention, too, just on a personal level, UFC 143, the Diaz-Condit card, I really enjoyed that. I went to go see that in 3D, and I remember when they announced it, they said they were going to do 4 3D cards a year. They were going to try to, and I don't think they've done one since.
Nope.
But I went to the show at a theater downtown here in Chicago. The theater wasn't full, but it had a decent crowd, and it was a pretty good atmosphere. There's a lot of people, reacting to the fights, and once you got used to the 3D, it was actually a really nice experience. And I really enjoyed the card, and I thought the main event was fantastic. And it seemed like the crowd was really into it where I was. And I'm disappointed that they haven't done a 3D show since, because I would totally go see it again.
Never seen live sports in 3D, although I thought that would be one of the appeals of actually owning one of those systems. But yeah, I'd give it a whirl.
And we'll move on to Fight of the Year. And since I just mentioned it, my Fight of the Year was Carlos Condit and Nick Diaz at UFC 143. I think that is contrary to a lot of people who probably took something else. And I'll let you guys talk about it first before I mention the fight I'm thinking of.
Well, let's make sure Matt hasn't just completely punched out here because, he's so dedicated to the show.
Yeah, I'm so dedicated to the show. I enjoyed Jim Miller versus Joe Lozon. I think that was definitely a Fight of the Year candidate for me.
There's a recency bias here, and there's also, Mike, you're going to mention some fights probably because you've got a list there. I did some prep, but you have to kind of default. I think that Sherdog got this right. I think that Chan Sung Jung versus Dustin Poirier was the Fight of the Year. Chan Sung Jung was the underdog. I personally picked him going in, but a lot of people thought it was going to be kind of a coronation for Poirier, that he was on his way to a title shot. And the surprise there, in addition to the method of finish and the back and forth nature of the fight and the crowd just going crazy the whole time, that'll be the one that I remember as being the best of MMA for 2012.
That was the fight I was referencing, obviously. I rewatched both of these fights today, and the thing that separates – there's two things that separates these two fights to me, or three things. First is Condit Diaz are on another level than Jung and Poirier.
I don't know about. I mean, relative to the weight class. I mean, we're both talking about top 5 guys in each weight class.
To me, Diaz and Condit was more competitive. Rewatching it, I thought there was no point in the fight where Poirier was in a position to win.
Okay.
And
fair enough.
the third point I would make is that Condit and Diaz, and this is sort of there's kind of an extrapolation here. Not only was that bout discussed more because of the result of the fight in terms of the controversy around the decision. I still think Carlos Condit won that fight. There are still people that think Nick Diaz won that fight, but it also had such an effect later in the year when George St. Pierre came back, and who basically that foiled the St. Pierre Diaz fight that we're going to get now. That the UFC wanted to put on in 2012 for St. Pierre's return. So all the three of those things, put it to me over Chan Sung Jung and Dustin Poirier.
I don't give a shit about George St. Pierre being hurt. That doesn't elevate that fight for me.
Well, no, but what about that Lozon Miller fight? Why is that not in your consideration?
No,
why is that not in consideration or even discussion? That was a fucking hell of a fight.
Well, okay, he probably used the same argument that he did for Poirier versus Chan Sung Jung, which is at what point did you think Joe Lozon might win that fight?
Joe Lozon, in my opinion, he looked good in the second and third.
He looked good, but at no point were you like, "Oh, Jim Miller's in trouble."
Joe Lozon won took the second round.
That at no point you're not arguing what I'm saying. You're saying different things. You're saying
I'm avoiding your comments.
Apples are delicious and red.
What I'm saying is that if the basis of fight of the year is how important it is for the division, okay, fine. But if we're talking about the actual fight of the year, you can't argue that because it was the fight of the year. That was a fucking fight.
You also have to have sway. You have to have these swoons in competitive balance and who's winning the fight, and not just on the scorecards, but who you actually think has a chance to finish. I enjoy sunny days. I'm just gonna start I'm just gonna start using non sequiturs when you do it now. It's gonna be really funny.
You're just gonna start quoting HBK.
I'm building I could do that too. That'd be much fun. I'm giving you the night off.
You've lost your smile.
You don't give me nothing but respect. That's still one of my favorite scenes in WWF history. Do you guys know what I'm referencing?
I don't actually.
When Shawn Michaels had Psycho Sid as his bodyguard. And Psycho Sid cost him a match at like SummerSlam or something. And the next night, Vince McMahon's in there doing the in-ring interview. And Shawn Michaels said, I don't really need a bodyguard. So listen, big man, next time I have a title shot, I'm giving you the night off. And Sid grabs the microphone and he yells, "You listen to me, you stupid little puke." And and then he power bombs him 3 times. And it's
spot on Psycho Sid, by the way. Spot on Psycho Sid.
I love my Psycho Sid. When he's fucking like yelling at Paul, I don't want to do anymore because I feel like you're making fun of me, but I love my Psycho Sid impression.
No, I'm not making fun at all. That was actually spot on. Psycho. That was awesome.
Now you listen to me, fat man.
So the other fights that I saw that got some recognition across the internet, Ben Henderson, Frankie Edgar won at UFC 144. Jake Ellenberger and Diego Sanchez at the UFC on Fuel debut. Demetrius Johnson and Ian McCall, the first fight at UFC on Fox 2 or FX2. St. Pierre and Condit at 154. Shogun and Brandon Vera at Fox 4. John Fitch and Eric Silva at 153. Martin Kamen and Thiago Alves at FX2.
Good.
Tim Boach and Okami at 144. And one that I thought, just given the hype and given how it played out, Anderson Silva and Chael Sonnen the rematch at UFC 148.
Well, again, this gets into what is the fight of the year, because it was it the most watched? Was it the one that made you cheer the loudest? Was it the one that made you the happiest? Or was it the one that was the most competitive and the one that, like, when I think of fight of the year, I'm thinking, like, if somebody asked me, like, who wasn't an MMA fan, hey, show me the best fight from last year, what fight would I show them? And it wouldn't be Sonnen versus Silva.
Right.
It would be probably Young versus Poirier, or even Lozon versus Miller, just to show them how awesome MMA can be. But I don't think that they'd be watching that going like, "Hey, who's going to win this?"
And the last category.
Oh, we have one more. Jesus,
we have one more, and one that we've
promotion of the year. Do we do promotion of the year now?
What about Ring Girl of the year?
Ring Girl of the year.
Brittany Ward probably wasn't a ring girl, but I'm still going to pick her because volleyball ass.
You have no idea what a test is.
Yeah, we've established.
Dude, no. Brittany Ward.
Stop talking! Stop it!
Do you remember who I'm talking
Stop
about?
it! Stop!
Anyone remember Brittany Ward?
Stop talking!
It's not a Stacy Keibler ass. It's a very different ass.
You have lost all any ability to talk about butts.
No,
you don't have that
I have
right.
ass credibility, sir.
You
I just
not
have a broader
that right.
range than most. They don't have to be certain dimensions for me to appreciate them.
No, the final category, boys, is Fighter of the Year.
Oh, it's Matt Brown. No, I'm just kidding. Fighter of the Year is Ben Henderson. That's obvious.
Yeah, that's what I said a week or two ago, and that looks pretty prescient now. It looks like that was kind of the consensus among a lot of the media sources.
Well, I saw a few, and I'm going to go with one guy that didn't get a lot of love for it, and I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that his fight had just taken place toward the end of the year. I'm going with Cain Velasquez, coming back from adversity or his loss.
Shoulder surgery as well.
Last year. Coming back, just destroying Antonio Silva and just dominating Junior Dos Santos in a way that we've not seen before at the year-end show on December 29th. The other people I've seen, John Jones, who I think probably would have been a better argument for him had he fought Dan Henderson in September. Ben Henderson's another guy I've seen. Ronda Rousey is someone that I've seen. I think she has a leg up in 2013, given just the fact that she's going to be main eventing a show for the UFC. Yeah, one guy that I've talked about, I don't really think he deserves Fighter of the Year, but someone that I think deserves at least recognition in the argument is Carlos Condit, involved in two of the better fights in 2013 or 2012, two of the highest profile fights in 2012. And even in a loss to George St. Pierre, I thought looked as good as you can in a sort of dominant loss like that. Never showed signs of complete domination or giving up. Fought George St. Pierre to the bell, and going 1-1 in UFC title fights to me.
He scored a good solid knockdown in that fight too. I've seen absolutely nobody else mention Carlos Condit. I think you're a man on an island there, and you guys are sleeping on Stefan Struve. It's going to be a breakout year for him.
What about Alex Gustafsson? Gustafsson should be in that discussion as well.
Did he go 3-0 or just the 2-0?
2-0. He was because he was injured after the Silva fight.
Yeah, so I mean, Thiago Silva's just not. It's not as shiny of a win as he used to be.
No, but it's not a shining win after that fight. You can't look in hindsight and say, it doesn't count. That was a huge win, as was the Shogun. You can't say
but it wasn't as big because after the Vera fight, he was at his peak, and then it comes out that he failed the drug test, and I think that was his first fight back from that, other than a scrub.
Matt, are you going to have a response to that?
No,
he's just going to tell me to shut up. He's just going to
shut up. How about the fact that Silva? Can we go Fighter not of the Year and say it's Thiago Silva?
The answer to that's clearly Josh Barnett.
No, it's Thiago Silva, who had in 2 years he's had 2 fights overturned into no contests. The first was the Brandon Vera for fake pee, and the second one was the Stanislav Netkov fight where he tested positive for marijuana metabolites, and he was had it turned into a no contest. That dude is not the Fighter of the Year.
I love me some Stanislav Netkov, A. And B, I think my not Fighter of the Year would probably be Jake Shields for his nebulous, what did he fail the drug test for at UFC 150 for his no contest win, quote-unquote, against Ed Herman.
So that's 2012, guys.
Who's your non-Fighter of the Year, Mike?
I don't have a non-Fighter of the Year. Come on, guys.
Oh, come on, bro. None of us.
Brown. Matt Brown, because he beat a bunch of bums in 2012.
Whatever, dude. We're the completely untethered MMA podcast now. We're not worried about running into any of these people or anywhere.
Hey, I'm still trying to stay in this industry, ass.
Did I say podcast? I meant radio show.
I'm still trying to stay in this industry. Yeah, how about this? Last thing of the day. What's your favorite Strikeforce moment ever?
Ever. Ooh, my favorites. What is it? Is it Fedor getting choked out? Is it Fedor getting TKO'd? Is it Fedor getting knocked out? So many choices. I'm sorry, that was mean.
For some reason,
It's my favorite Strikeforce moment. The Misha Tate butt gif.
Maybe Melvin Manhoff destroying Robbie Lawler for 3 minutes and then getting put to sleep by an errant right hand.
Melvin Manhoff is my favorite person in the world.
I thought that he was going to cripple Robbie Lawler in the wing. He'd hit him with leg kicks, and Robbie Lawler's knee would end up in his ear.
Yeah.
I think to me, any sort of Strikeforce moment to me is always tied to Nick Diaz. And for whatever reason, whenever I think of Strikeforce, I think of the Diaz Paul Daly fight. And I don't know what about it, but that fight always to me was Strikeforce in a nutshell.
What about the gentleman? This stuff is on national television.
What about Lashley versus Griggs?
Ooh.
Or Cyborg versus Finney?
Or Kimbo and Thompson?
Or Cyborg versus Hirono?
Kimbo Thompson was in Elite XC, man.
Yeah, that was Elite XC, son.
Jeez.
Don't confuse the two just because they were both completely overblown and overhyped competitors to the UFC.
It's the same thing, right?
Well, Strikeforce did get all of their stuff except for Kimbo.
Actually, my favorite Strikeforce moment was attending a Strikeforce show as media. I went to the Rousey Kaufman, and just it's always been a joke as people asking questions of Scott Coker, but literally every single response that Scott Coker had was, "We're going to go back to the office, and then in 2 weeks we'll discuss it between myself and Sean Shelby, and then we'll have an answer." And that was literally his response to every single question.
Both teams play hard, man. Both teams play hard.
And Scott Coker, I want to really know what his appearance fee was for those events. Because if you listen to scrums, like Dana White scrums and stuff, people are asking legitimately, "Hey, does Scott Coker have a job with the UFC after Strikeforce is dead?" And Dana's not saying anything, but it's
both teams played hard.
Come on, they're not. Coker's not doing.
Coker was probably getting $150 in chips and a buffet ticket there towards the end to show up for those things.
He had a per diem. He had to get a per diem.
It was just ridiculous. You all know what my favorite Strikeforce moment was, right?
What?
When they got bought.
That was true.
When I found out they got bought, it came the night before. I'd gone out and drank a lot with a friend of mine, and I came back, and when I came back home, and in the cab, I found a guy's cell phone. And he started texting it and calling it all day. And I didn't wake up until 1 in the afternoon. And when I finally did, I found Strikeforce had gotten bought by the UFC.
Yeah, I was at lunch, and PDL, who you and all guys know, emailed me and said, "I assume you're not blogging right now because you're too busy dancing a fuck around." And I started at that moment.
That's 2012, everybody. We'll see you next week.
All right.